So for my latest video, I wanted to talk about avoidance behaviors and why they can be so detrimental to those of us who are experiencing anxiety and panic disorder. First of all, what an avoidance behavior is, when it comes to anxiety, it means any of the things that tend to trigger our anxieties, even if they're things we've enjoyed our whole lives, we start to remove ourselves from them because of the uncomfortable feelings and sensations we're getting while we're doing these things. I remember that my first panic attack occurred in an automobile. I mentioned that in one of my other videos. And wouldn't you know it, almost every time I got into an automobile for a long time, the instant feeling would be terror. It really wasn't comfortable. And so what our tendency will be in these situations, whatever the stressor may be, maybe we have a panic attack in a grocery store. Maybe we have a panic attack or experience tremendous anxiety in a social environment where there's a lot of people. And it really doesn't matter where we experience it, because of the chemicals that are produced, the adrenaline that's dumped, the neurotransmitters that our brains are going to secrete. It makes it so that our mind tells us, don't do that. That could get you killed. That this could end you. Even though there's no reasonable fear, right? I mean, walking into a grocery store, there's no reason to, for that to be a life-threatening situation. Driving to work, not really a life-threatening situation most of the time. And it could be wherever we are. It could be, like I said, with people with social anxiety. It can be, a conversation. We start to remove ourselves from conversations, even conversations that, are good conversations that we've had our whole lives with people that we trust and care about. But because we experience this feeling of intense anxiety or even a panic attack while we're doing it, it doesn't matter what the activity was. It can be the most benign activity, the most mundane activity. If it triggered a panic attack or a feeling of intense anxiety, our minds, in order to keep us alive, they're going to say, no, don't do that. It's dangerous. But what this video is about is why we can't give in to that feeling. We can't give in to that feeling. Take it from someone who this happened to. Your world will become smaller and smaller and smaller if you start giving in to avoidance behaviors. Remember this, the fear that you have is not rational and is not based on a real danger. That's absolutely true. And I know, because I've been maybe where some of you are now, or maybe where some of you have been. I've been in that place where, it was impossible to use my logical mind. I was, that feeling, boom, I don't care. I know it's not dangerous, I'm out. But it's really important that we not flee, that we not try to get to either a safe place or a safe person. Because there is no real imminent danger. So we're reinforcing a fallacy. We're reinforcing something that's not true. And also, because of the nature of anxiety, you'll start to experience these anxieties in all kinds of situations once you start giving in to avoidance behaviors. And this is how I ended up, for a short time in my life, unfortunately, being agoraphobic. The only place I went was to work and work and home pretty much for maybe as long as a year. And it was because I gave in to these avoidance behaviors. So what you'll notice, ways to tell that you're starting to give in to avoidance behaviors is if something made you feel uncomfortable or you had a panic attack and now all of a sudden you're not doing that. And it's something that you've always done, and it's something that's not dangerous. That should not have triggered any type of panic attack or sense of imminent danger. If you notice that you're starting to do this, it's so important to try to stop that. Another thing we'll do with avoidance behaviors, we'll have people that we're comfortable around. I know initially when I first started having panic attacks, that person was my wife. And if I wasn't with my wife, anxiety was, but somehow when I got back around her, that would calm me enough where I wasn't completely out of my mind. But both of these are irrational. Remember this. There's not a person that's going to make it so that you're quote unquote safe. There's not a place that's going to make it so you're quote unquote safe. These are irrational fears, and you're backing them up with irrational behavior. So that will cause your mind to make a connection that is fiction. And trust me on this, it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller. Your world will get smaller and smaller. At first, you won't want to drive on long trips. Then you won't want to drive on short trips. Then you won't want to drive at all. First, you don't want to go to you don't want to go to the grocery store. Then you don't want to go to your family's house, your extended family's house. And pretty soon you're living in a prison cell of your own creation. Now, this is not to show a lack of sympathy or empathy, because I've been there. I consider myself, a reasonably intelligent man, and also not, a huge coward. But when your body is secreting these chemicals, the natural instinct is to get someplace safe. So then you ask, well, so what do you do? Okay, smart guy, what do you do when I start feeling terrified? What am I just supposed to stand there and make a fool of myself in front of people? And, when I feel like for sure I'm going to die or have a panic attack? Well, not exactly. This is what you do. At least this is what's worked for me. And again, this is a good time to mention that I do not have a degree in psychology. I am not a doctor. Always work with your mental health professional to get better the fastest you can from any mental health issues. But in my experience, what helps is to, no matter to what degree you can do it, prove to yourself that fleeing or avoiding is not going to actually help you. So you say, how do you do that? Okay, for instance, let's say you've had some panic attacks. You're in a grocery store and it starts to hit you. And you're like, oh my gosh. Right there, I am not telling you not to leave, but I am telling you, try to go as slow as possible if you have to leave. Try to use the belly breathing that I've talked about in another video. Try to get yourself to calm down. I know that if you're in a certain spot, you're not going to be able to. And that doesn't mean you're a failure or that it's not going to get better, because it will. Trust me, it does. But try not to give in to that I got to get out of here feeling. So if you can continue and so let's say you were going to do a full week of grocery shopping, but that hits you, instead of just running out of the store and, getting into your car or wherever you consider safe, driving home, whatever you got to do, instead of doing that, maybe just shop for a day. Try to spend 5 minutes in the store instead of just running out. It's not going to be easy. It's not. It takes work. But you'll be surprised. If the next time you go, you can go for 10 minutes. You're starting to prove to yourself that the fear that is happening to you is not real. It's not an imminent danger. And that certainly fleeing from an invisible fear that is unjustified is not going to help you. It does not help you. It shrinks your life. It'll ruin all of the things you enjoy because you won't be able to, essentially you'll end up trapped in your house where every little thing will start to cause fear, anxiety, and you'll be living in a prison. So extend it. So, okay, let's say for me, driving an automobile, this is my Achilles heel. I would be lying to you guys if I didn't admit, even to this day, I still struggle driving on closed access highways. If it's a highway where you pay to get on and where it's essentially illegal to pull off unless your car's broken down, I struggle with that. But what I did to get so that I could get through it to the degree that I can now, and so much better than when I was at my worst, is to force myself to take day trips. Drive, keep extending further. If there's a place we're going that's an hour away from my house, well, I have to force myself to drive. I have to do it. And I have to do it with my family with me, to prove that I can, because that was another big trigger, was having my family with me. I felt like I had all of their fates in my hand. And, I have to understand, just like all of us do with anxiety, we don't have that much control. So, I force myself to drive reasonably short distances and keep doing it, stretching out. This is something, tell me if this isn't true for you if you try not giving into these avoidance behaviors. Not only incrementally can you make great improvements, but also if you happen to say all of a sudden there's something coming up and you have to drive 2 or 3 hours. In my instance, you have to do something like that. What I'd notice after I was able to do that, even if I was sweating bullets the entire time that I did that, is when I got back, the short trips that I make on a daily basis, I didn't even think about them. It really helped. So that's why what you're doing every time you do this, every time you force yourself to be uncomfortable in a situation, whether it's a social situation, you feel like just walking away from a conversation, stay another few sentences. Don't give in to that feeling that somehow there's this safe place or a safe person that you need to be around. Because again, it shrinks our world. It will debilitate us. It will take away our ability to earn a living, to have a functional family. And we don't want to do this. And especially because these fears are unfounded. These chemicals are being released that are released for, fight or flight chemicals that are released to save our lives in life-threatening situations. And we are not in life-threatening situations. If we have anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, whatever it might be, our mind is just dumping those chemicals and it's making us feel, or at least misinterpreting the chemicals, right? It's making us feel like we're in a life-threatening situation. So that has been how I have fought through avoidance behaviors. Don't give in to them. Another key, and this one's another really hard one. I'll probably make a whole video about this at some time, but anticipatory thinking. If you have something where you know you're going to have to drive for an hour, don't spend a day or a week working yourself up for whatever event or experience, that you're thinking of. This will really create the environment. It'll make it ripe for you to have a panic attack. And this was something that I also would do, and it led me to almost always, it'd be like, if I get worrying about it, get thinking about it ahead of time, anticipatory thinking, then I would end up either it would be a nightmare when I did it, or I couldn't even do it. I was paralyzed. I said, nope. I told my wife, no, just go without me. So try to avoid anticipatory thinking. try to extend when you're in those situations where you want to avoid, try to extend your time there just a little longer. I know it's a lot to ask to just, oh no, tough it out, because a lot of the time we will end up having a panic attack if we do that. But if we can just slowly extend it and, expose ourselves to a little more of that uncomfortable feeling, if we, and here's the other thing. If you fail, if you try, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to stay. I'm going to shop the whole time. I'm going to drive the whole time. But you have to pull off or you have to leave the store early. That's okay. It's okay to not be successful one time. That doesn't mean you throw in the towel. These feelings will change from day to day. And you don't want to have an outlook like all or nothing. And again, that gets into another thing. A lot of us have OCD as well. And for those of you who do, you probably know, if one thing goes wrong in the way we have it in our minds, and it's not a real perfect, it's what our minds have created as the right way to do something. If one thing goes wrong, it's worthless. If there's a scratch on the refrigerator, we throw it out. If there's whatever it might be that doesn't go along, or we punch in a minute late for work. I know somebody who, will be an amazing worker, goes on for months at a time being a great worker, but when they are late or something comes up and they messed up their record of attendance, they end up not being able to work anymore. And that's somebody who suffers from OCD. So we don't want to be all or nothing. And we don't want to be that way with these avoidance behaviors either. If we aren't able to completely get through something, that's okay. Just next time try. Just keep trying to put yourself another inch further. Because every time we do that, we're proving to our intellectual mind that there is not a real imminent danger. There is not really something that is going to threaten our lives or the lives of those close to us. So another thing that I'll say before I wrap up the video is just that work on that belly breathing. When you're in those, whether it's exposure therapy or you're trying to go against avoidance behaviors, work on that belly breathing. That will help. I know it sounds, but it really does help, because what we do with anxiety a lot of the time is we either hyperventilate, we breathe shallow and rapidly, or we hold our breaths. So, because we're bracing for something. And either one of these things will cause real terrible feelings and if we already are having anxiety, could trigger a panic attack. So work on your belly breathing, fight against those avoidance behaviors, and fight that anticipatory thinking. If you have to just kind of do things spontaneously to avoid the anticipatory thinking, do that, because that workup, and the joke is on us, right? Because almost never, I've been on this earth more than 5 decades, and almost never has my worry been equaled by the actual event. Almost never. So that's about all I want to say in this video. I hope it's helpful to someone out there. Again, I thank everybody for their support, the comments, like, share, subscribe. And the main thing is don't take an all or nothing approach to getting better. It's going to take time. It's going to take work. It may take medication. It may, whatever it may take. But be determined. Know that you're going to get through it. And until my next video, take care.